Now to Red Lobster. It has officially filed for bankruptcy. Chief Business Correspondent Rebecca Jarvis has the story. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, George. This is the largest seafood restaurant chain in the United States. They have about 650 locations, and they have filed for bankruptcy.
Somewhere in America, in the summer of 2023, a restaurant manager placed an order for 564 million shrimp servings. Not 564,000, not 5 million. 564 million individual shrimp portions for a $20 all-you-can-eat promotion that his company's own management team had explicitly warned him against. His suppliers scrambled. Some restaurants ran out entirely, going days and then weeks without any shrimp to serve. While customers sat at tables waiting for a dish the kitchen could not fill. By the end of that quarter, the promotion had produced an $11 million operating loss. By the end of the year, the company had lost $76 million total. By May 2024, it filed for bankruptcy. Every news headline about Red Lobster's collapse blamed the shrimp. That framing is both accurate and almost completely wrong. The shrimp was the last domino in a sequence that began exactly 10 years earlier, in 2014, when a private equity firm bought the company, sold its buildings out from underneath it, and handed the key to a seafood conglomerate with a direct financial interest in how much shrimp Red Lobster bought and at what price. By the time the endless shrimp promotion ran, Red Lobster was already carrying $190 million in annual lease obligations on restaurants it used to own. The shrimp didn't sink Red Lobster. It just made the sinking visible. This is the complete story. Part 1, what Red Lobster actually was.
Lots of people talking about a big announcement from Red Lobster this week. Dozens of locations are closing, including 3 in our area. It comes as bankruptcy rumors have been swirling around the seafood chain for weeks. But did you know the very first restaurant was right here in the Tampa Bay?
Bill Darden was 44 years old when he opened the first Red Lobster in Lakeland, Florida in January 1968. He had spent 2 decades in the restaurant business, mostly running Howard Johnson's locations across the American South. And he had identified a gap that seemed obvious once someone pointed at it. Most of the interior of the United States had no reliable access to affordable seafood. If you didn't live near a coast, your options for a shrimp dinner were either a fine dining restaurant that charged accordingly or a can of something from the grocery store. Nothing in between. Darden's partner Charlie Woodsby described their founding philosophy in 3 words: informal and family prices. The idea was not to make seafood luxurious. The idea was to make it ordinary. Something you could take your family to on a Tuesday. The first location was a single building with a Red Lobster sign and no pretension whatsoever. In most of Middle America, you couldn't get decent seafood. Jonathan Mays, the editor of Restaurant Business magazine, said years later, Red Lobster brought it to the masses. It worked immediately. In 1970, just 2 years in, General Mills, the company behind Wheaties, Cheerios, and Betty Crocker, acquired the 5-location chain and began expanding it nationally. By 1985, there were 372 Red Lobsters across the country. By the time General Mills spun off all its restaurant holdings into a new company called Darden Restaurants in 1995, Red Lobster was one of the most recognized casual dining brands in America. The place where landlocked families had their first lobster, where birthdays were celebrated with the Surf and Turf special, and where the Cheddar Bay biscuits, introduced in 1992 and placed on the table before anyone had even ordered anything, became arguably the most beloved free side dish in American restaurant history. Darden Restaurants grew to over 1,800 locations across multiple brands. Red Lobster was the flagship. The company was named in an irony that would eventually become its own footnote, after the man who had founded the chain and walked away before any of what followed could happen. Part 2. The first warning sign nobody learned from. In 2003, Red Lobster ran a promotion called Endless Crab. The concept, $22.99 for all-you-can-eat snow crab. The assumption embedded in that price, customers would eat a moderate amount and the math would work out. The assumption was wrong. Crab is not shrimp. Snow crab is expensive, labor-intensive to prepare. And when customers discovered they could eat as much of it as they wanted for $23, they ate as much of it as they wanted. The then chairman later told Wall Street analysts with some understatement that the problem was not the second helping on all you can eat, but the third. The promotion ran for 7 weeks. In those 7 weeks, it cost Red Lobster $3.3 million in direct losses. Darden's stock dropped the day the numbers became public, wiping out $400 million in shareholder value in a single trading session. CEO Edna Morris lost her job. Endless Crab became a textbook case study in the restaurant industry about the specific danger of offering unlimited quantities of expensive, volatile commodity protein at a fixed price. The lesson was clear. Red Lobster noted it, filed it, and moved on. 20 years later, they did it again. Part 3. The sale that decided everything. By the early 2000s, Darden Restaurants was under pressure. The company's share price was underperforming. An activist investment firm called Starboard Value LP, which had accumulated a 5.5% stake in Darden, was pushing management to make structural changes. Darden responded by deciding to sell Red Lobster. The sale, announced in 2014, went to a San Francisco-based private equity firm called Golden Gate Capital for $2.1 billion. Here is what actually happened with that $2.1 billion. Because the structure of the deal is the foundation of everything that came after. To finance the acquisition, Golden Gate Capital executed what is known in finance as a sale-leaseback. Red Lobster, which had spent decades owning the real estate underneath its restaurants, sold those properties to a real estate company called American Realty Capital Properties for $1.5 billion. Red Lobster immediately began paying rent on those same properties it had just sold. Golden Gate collected the $1.5 billion from the real estate sale, which covered most of the $2.1 billion purchase price. The firm itself only needed to contribute approximately $600 million in actual cash to complete the deal. The practical consequence was this. Red Lobster went from being a company that owned its buildings to a company paying rent on properties it used to own outright. In an industry where rent is one of the primary costs that determines whether a location is profitable or not. Analyst John Gordon described the result plainly. That produced cost pressures on Red Lobster that they've never had before. Starboard Value, the activist firm that had pushed for the sale, had actually warned against it. In a public statement at the time, Starboard said the deal could result in permanent destruction of shareholder value. Nobody at Darden appeared to find this prediction particularly alarming. The sale went through. Golden Gate Capital had effectively recouped most of its investment before it had changed a single menu item. Part 4. The supplier who became the owner. In 2015, a year after Golden Gate's acquisition, a Bangkok-based seafood conglomerate called Thai Union Group purchased a 49% minority stake in Red Lobster for $575 million. Thai Union is one of the largest seafood companies in the world. It operates under brands most American consumers have never heard of, but have almost certainly eaten, including chicken of the sea tuna. It had been one of Red Lobster's shrimp suppliers for over 20 years before taking that equity stake. That last sentence is the one that matters. Thai Union was not just an investor in Red Lobster. It was also selling product to Red Lobster. The company sat on both sides of the transaction simultaneously, collecting profits as an owner while collecting revenue as a supplier. In 2020, Thai Union deepened its financial position in Red Lobster and eventually became the controlling majority shareholder. The conflict of interest that had existed in 2015 as a potential concern had become the central operational reality of the company. What followed was documented in Red Lobster's own bankruptcy court filings. Under a CEO appointed at Thai Union's direction, Red Lobster eliminated 2 of its breaded shrimp suppliers, leaving Thai Union as the exclusive shrimp provider for the chain. This is not an allegation or an inference. The bankruptcy trustee stated it directly in court documents. Under the guise of a quality review, the filing states Red Lobster's management, at Thai Union's apparent direction, removed competing suppliers and handed Thai Union a monopoly on one of the chain's primary ingredients. At prices Red Lobster had no competitive alternative to negotiate against. Thai Union, for its part, called these allegations meritless. and said it looked forward to a full representation of the facts. It filed its own counterclaim, arguing that Red Lobster had abruptly changed its shrimp demand forecast in late 2023, leaving Thai Union with $22.9 million in excess inventory and an unpaid balance of nearly $3.7 million. The legal dispute went on. What is not in dispute is the structural reality. A company that was simultaneously your largest shareholder and your only shrimp supplier had interests that did not necessarily align with yours. And in 2023, those interests converged on the decision that ended the company. Part 5. 564 million shrimp. Endless Shrimp had been a successful limited-time promotion at Red Lobster for nearly 20 years. Every fall, the chain would announce the promotion. Customers would come in. The restaurant would do well for a few weeks, and then it would end. The price and the time limit were both essential to the math. It worked because it was temporary, and because shrimp, unlike snow crab, is a manageable commodity to source at scale for a finite promotional window. In May 2023, Red Lobster's CEO, operating under Thai Union's direction, made Endless Shrimp a permanent, everyday menu item. The price, $20. The rationale, according to Thai Union CFO Ludovic Garnier at a quarterly earnings call. We knew the price was cheap, but the idea was to bring more traffic in the restaurants. So we wanted to boost our traffic, and it didn't work. According to the bankruptcy filing, this decision was made, despite significant pushback from other members of the company's management team. Multiple Red Lobster executives had specifically warned that $20 was below the price point at which the promotion could operate profitably. The warning was documented. It was overruled. Traffic did increase by 4% in the third quarter of 2023. Customers came in, sat down, and ate. They ate multiple rounds. Some locations ran out of shrimp entirely, going days and then weeks without the product that was the centerpiece of the promotion advertised on every sign outside the building. The restaurant had committed to sourcing approximately 564 million shrimp servings for the year. The supply chain strained, the operation strained, the margin collapsed. In the third quarter of 2023 alone, Red Lobster lost $11 million from the promotion. By the fourth quarter, the losses from that single menu item had added another $12.5 million. Total company losses for the 2023 fiscal year, $76 million. The customer count had already fallen 30% since 2019, per the company's own filings. The $190.5 million in annual lease payments on properties Golden Gate had sold in 2014 were still due every quarter, regardless of how many shrimp were being consumed at the tables above them. Around $64 million of those lease obligations were tied to underperforming locations that were generating negative cash flow. The promotion was quietly ended. The price was briefly raised to $25. It didn't matter. In January 2024, Thai Union CEO Thiraphong Chansiri ended a meeting about Red Lobster with 4 words. Red Lobster is done and over with, he said. Thai Union announced it would exit its investment, taking a $530 million non-cash impairment charge, nearly the entire $575 million it had put in 7 years earlier. Without Thai Union's financial backing, Red Lobster had no capital lifeline. Golden Gate Capital, which had structured the 2014 deal so that it recouped most of its investment through the real estate sale within 2 years of buying the company, walked away from the entire situation having made money. Part 6, what bankruptcy looked like on the ground. On May 20th, 2024, Red Lobster filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. At the time of filing, the chain operated 578 locations across the United States and Canada and employed approximately 36,000 workers. In the days before and after the filing, Red Lobster abruptly closed more than 100 locations. The closure notifications for many of those locations went out through the shift scheduling app that restaurant employees use to check their hours. Workers who had jobs on Monday discovered on Tuesday morning, through a push notification on their phones, that their location was closed and their employment had ended. They received, in many cases, less than 24 hours of advance notice. No severance was disclosed. The law firms managing the bankruptcy process had already billed the company $10.5 million in fees by the time the filing became public. Nearly the exact amount the entire endless shrimp promotion had cost in a single quarter. Inside the bankruptcy filing, the restructuring CEO Jonathan Taboose laid out the full list of decisions that had brought the company to that point. The sale-leaseback in 2014, the Thai union conflict of interest, the exclusive shrimp supply arrangement, the endless shrimp promotion made permanent against internal objections, the 30% decline in customer count since 2019, the $190.5 million annual lease burden. He did not describe these as a sequence of bad luck. He described them as a sequence of decisions. Casual dining as a category had slipped from 36% of total restaurant industry sales in 2013 to 31% in 2023. A structural headwind that no single chain could reverse on its own. Red Lobster had not adapted its model to that shift. It had instead been run through a succession of ownership structures, each of which extracted what it could and passed the underlying liability to the next party in line. Part 7. The numbers. 130 locations closed during the bankruptcy process. Roughly 1 out of every 5 that had existed when the filing was made. $76 million in losses in 2023 alone. $190.5 million in annual lease obligations as of the bankruptcy filing on properties the company had owned outright until a private equity firm sold them in 2014. $64 million of that lease burden tied specifically to locations that were losing money. $530 million. The lost Thai union wrote off when it walked away, having held the company for 8 years and left it with worse operations, higher costs, a compromised supply chain, and an infamous shrimp promotion as its final contribution to the brand. $10.5 million in bankruptcy law firm fees, billed while the company was in the process of closing 100 locations and notifying employees via APE. 36,000 workers employed at the time of filing. A $2.1 billion acquisition in 2014, funded primarily through a real estate deal that immediately saddled the acquired company with rent payments it would spend the next decade struggling to afford. These numbers do not describe a company that was killed by unlimited shrimp. They describe a company that was financially structured for failure before it sold a single plate of anything under new ownership, and then run through 2 subsequent owner-operators who each made the underlying problems worse before handing what remained to the next party. Part 8. What remains? In September 2024, 4 months after the bankruptcy filing, a federal judge approved Red Lobster's reorganization plan. The new owner was Fortress Investment Group, an asset manager with experience acquiring and attempting to turn around distressed companies. Fortress injected $70 million in equity and appointed a new CEO, Damola Ademola-Kun, the former chief executive of P.F. Chang's. Red Lobster emerged from bankruptcy with approximately 544 locations, down from 650 before the process began, and more than 30,000 employees. Ademola-Kun came in with a restructuring playbook. New menu development, revamped marketing, operational improvements, leadership changes. He described Red Lobster's challenge as rebuilding relevance in a casual dining category that had been shrinking for a decade, against competitors that had not spent the preceding 10 years distracted by ownership conflicts and real estate disputes. By the end of 2025, system-wide sales had fallen 6.2%. to $1.56 billion. The third consecutive annual decline. As of mid-2026, approximately 100 Red Lobster locations were losing more money than the rest of the system was generating in profit, creating a drag that the new management acknowledged publicly while continuing to negotiate with landlords and vendors. Tariffs on imported seafood imposed in 2025 created a new cost pressure on a chain still sourcing shrimp internationally after the Thai union supply relationship ended. More closures were being considered. Red Lobster remains the largest seafood casual dining chain in the United States. It is also the smallest it has been in at least 26 years. The Cheddar Bay biscuits still arrive at the table before you order. The menu still features the lobster lover's dream and the ultimate feast and the Admiral's feast. The restaurants look largely the same as they have looked for decades. What changed was the structure underneath. The buildings that used to be assets became liabilities the moment Golden Gate sold them in 2014. The shrimp supplier that had always been a vendor became a controlling shareholder in 2020. The CEO, who turned a seasonal promotion into a permanent menu item in 2023, did so at the direction of owners who sold more shrimp when Red Lobster ordered more shrimp. None of these were natural disasters. Each was a decision made by someone in a position to make it, and each made the next crisis more likely. Bill Darden, who built the first restaurant on the principle that working families deserved a decent seafood dinner at a price they could afford, died in 1994. He sold the chain to General Mills in 1970 and was not present for any of the ownership changes that followed. The company that bears his name has, as of 2026, been through 5 separate ownership structures since he opened that first building in Lakeland, Florida, each of which found something to extract and left something worse behind. The Cheddar Bay biscuits are still good. That at least hasn't changed. If you made it through the full story, hit like and subscribe. There are more companies like this than most people realize. Institutions built by one person's genuine idea, pass through enough hands that the idea becomes unrecognizable by the end. We'll keep finding them.